You hold in your hands a book born out of frustration, a frustration you may know all too well. If you have ever sent out resume after resume, only to be met with silence, ghosting, or a polite "not this time," you have felt the sting of being overlooked in a process that is anything but fair or rational. I wrote this for the overlooked, for the competent, the diligent, the almosts, for those who know they could excel if only they could get chosen. Let's be clear, hiring is not a meritocracy. It is not a science of perfect matches. It is a rapid-fire psychological gauntlet run by busy, biased humans whose decisions are shaped less by credentials and more by impression, narrative, and trust. Logic plays a part, but only after gut instinct has spoken. The best candidate rarely wins. The candidate who makes the right psychological moves at the right time does. This is not a book of quick tips or recycled interview hacks. It is a toolkit for designing your own selection, regardless of your background, connections, or perfect experience. What follows is not theory for theory's sake, but a practical operating system, grounded in research and tested in real careers for becoming the candidate who is not just seen, but chosen. Inside, you will find the 7 psychological levers that govern every hiring decision: primacy, halo, confirmation, clarity, warmth, signals, and proof. These are not arbitrary buzzwords, but the actual sequence of cognition every evaluator runs, often unconsciously, when deciding who advances and who disappears. You will learn to anchor first impressions, steer narratives, project instant trust, and assemble proof so compelling it cannot be ignored. Each principle builds upon the last, forming a system that, when mastered, not only gets you hired, but builds assets and reputation that pay compounding dividends for the rest of your career. If you feel that you have been waiting too long for permission, that you have talent trapped behind the glass of a noisy market, this is your invitation to step forward. This book will ask you to let go of the idea that being good is enough, and instead embrace the role of the architect, the one who shapes the judgment of others by design, not by chance. The road ahead will challenge your habits and perhaps your assumptions. It will invite you to act, to iterate, to build visible proof of your value before you need it. Along the way, you will discover that the act of making yourself easy to choose is not just about getting the job. It is about earning the leverage and freedom that come from being in demand. You have already taken the most important step, deciding to stop hoping and start leading. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Get chosen. The most dangerous lie in the corporate world is that hiring is a math test. We are taught to believe that if we check all the boxes, have the right degree, and list the correct skills, the algorithm will select us. We believe that the most qualified candidate wins, and that rejection is simply a calculation of merit. This is false. Hiring is not a math test. It is a judgment game played by exhausted, biased, and time-poor humans. While you are agonizing over the third bullet point on your resume, the person on the other side of the table is making a subconscious decision about you in less time than it takes to read this sentence. They are not weighing your credentials on a calibrated scale. They are looking for a shortcut. They are desperate for a signal that cuts through the noise so they can get back to their actual job. Winners understand this. They do not wait for the system to recognize their worth. They shape the judgment of the evaluator on purpose. Losers, conversely, hope that their hard work will shout loud enough to be heard. But in a crowded market, merit without a narrative is silent. You are reading this because you are tired of the silence. You are tired of the close but no emails, the ghosting, and the feeling that you are shouting into a void. You are in the right place. By the end of this book, you will have a complete operating system for being selected. We are going to dismantle the invisible rules that govern who gets picked and replace your hope with a repeatable 7-part sequence that you will run for every opportunity. The invisible game you are losing. To understand why you are getting rejected, you have to stop looking at your application and start looking at the hiring manager's brain. Decisions are made under extreme uncertainty and speed. When a hiring manager opens a role, they are not excited. They are burdened. They have a problem that needs solving, and every interview they conduct is time away from their actual work. They are operating with partial data. They cannot truly know if you will be a high performer or a toxic liability until months after you are hired. This gap creates anxiety. To manage this anxiety and conserve mental energy, the human brain defaults to shortcuts. This is where the game is won or lost. Early impressions anchor later judgments. If you do not set the frame in the first few seconds, randomness will set it for you. If you walk in with low energy or a confusing introduction, the evaluator's brain immediately tags you as risky or unimpressive. Once that tag is applied, a psychological phenomenon kicks in where the evaluator stops listening to your answers and starts looking for evidence to confirm their initial bias. Most candidates are drowning in noise. They submit resumes that take minutes to decipher, but they are read in seconds. They use generic bullets that blur into sameness. They create process friction by waiting for permission to speak or by sending vague follow-up emails that create decision anxiety. When you play the game this way, you are relying on luck. You are hoping the evaluator has the energy to dig for your gold. They usually don't. The compound interest of reputation. There are two trajectories for a career, and they diverge based on how well you play this judgment game. If you ignore these principles, you enter a cycle of friction. Your job searches drag on for months. You suffer from late-stage rejections that sap your confidence. You find yourself chasing recruiters, sending just checking in emails that reek of desperation. When an offer finally lands, it is often anchored low because you have no leverage. You accept a role with compressed titles and limited scope because you just want the pain to stop. Over time, this damages your reputation. Your network goes quiet because you are difficult to place. Cynicism replaces agency. But there is another way. When you master the psychology of selection, your reputation compounds. Imagine a scenario where your name travels ahead of you. Because you have engineered your signals and social proof, you don't start interviews at zero. You start with a lead. You generate multiple simultaneous offers, which normalizes success and shifts negotiations from cost to value. You secure roles with better scope and higher pay because you are perceived as a premium asset, not a commodity. This optionality gives you resilience. You have the freedom to say no to bad opportunities. You can pivot across industries faster because your narrative makes sense to outsiders. This isn't magic. It is the result of applying specific psychological levers that make choosing you the path of least resistance. Building your arsenal. This book is not a collection of tips. It is a blueprint for building assets. By the time you finish, you will not just be better at interviewing. You will own a suite of tools designed to dismantle resistance. You will build a 90-second value narrative. This is not an elevator pitch. It is a strategic script that moves from problem to action to result to transfer. You will learn to speak it smoothly and type it succinctly, mirroring the language of your target team. You will ship a fluency-optimized resume and profile. We will strip away the clutter that confuses the eye and replace it with a clean hierarchy and ruthless clarity. You will learn to create artifact links, evidence of your work, that are ready to click. You will learn to lead interviews with structure. Instead of waiting for questions, you will propose a simple agenda that signals leadership. You will deliver stories that are engineered to create a halo effect around your competence. You will run a friction-free follow-up process that does the hiring manager's work for them. The goal is to make yes the easiest word in the room. The 7-step decision engine. We are going to frame your new operating system around 7 core ideas from decision science and social psychology. These are not random concepts. They are the specific sequence in which a human brain processes a new person. The order is critical. You cannot build trust before you have attention. You cannot close the deal before you have proven safety. Here is the sequence we will master. First, we tackle primacy. The primacy effect shows that early signals anchor later interpretation. The first minute of your interaction, the first line of your email, the top third of your resume, the opening of the interview, decides the rest. We will engineer these moments so the evaluator feels you are the right choice before you even sit down. Second, we leverage the halo effect. Humans are bad at processing complex, contradictory data. Instead, we generalize. If we see one bright, undeniable strength, we assume you are strong everywhere. We will identify your flagship strength and make it echo across every touchpoint. Third, we harness confirmation bias. Once the evaluator has formed a positive first impression, primacy, and generalized your competence halo, they will subconsciously look for proof that they are right. We will not leave this to chance. We will steer the evidence hunt by mapping their concerns and feeding them the exact data they need to validate their gut feeling. Fourth, we obsess over clarity or processing fluency. The easier information is to process, the more likely it is to be believed. Complex, dense profiles feel risky. Clean, simple narratives feel safe. We will reduce the cognitive load of your application so that choosing you feels like a relief. Fifth, we establish warmth. The warmth competence model dictates that people judge intent, warmth, before ability, competence. If they don't trust you, your skills don't matter. We will systematize micro-behaviors that signal you are low drama and high respect, earning you the right to showcase your skills. Sixth, we deploy signals. According to signaling theory, hard-to-fake markers are the only way to prove quality in a low-trust environment. We will move beyond claiming you are hardworking and start showing costly, visible markers of quality that pre-sell your value. Finally, we close with proof. Social proof is the safety net. When an evaluator is on the fence, they look to others. We will orchestrate third-party endorsements to dissolve residual doubt, making the offer inevitable. Each step multiplies the next. Clarity boosts the perception of warmth. Signals prime the proof to land harder. If you miss an early rung, the later work weakens. You cannot social proof your way out of a bad first impression. Stop asking, start leading. The difference between the candidate who gets the offer and the one who gets the rejection often comes down to attitude. I don't mean positive thinking. I mean the stance you take in the interaction. Losers outsource control. They walk into the room and wait to be told what to do. They over-explain because they are nervous. They understructure their answers because they haven't prepared. They argue their credentials, hoping that if they list enough facts, they will win the debate. They view the interview as an interrogation they must survive. Winners own the frame. They understand that the hiring manager is lost in a sea of ambiguity and is looking for a captain. Winners lead agendas. They ask for next steps. They reduce friction for everyone involved. They do not wait for permission to show their value. They demonstrate it. Your mandate starting today is simple. Decide to be easy to choose. You are going to stop building alibis for why you didn't get the job and start building assets that get you hired. You are going to act today and iterate weekly. This is not about becoming a smooth talker or a manipulator. It is about becoming a professional who respects the evaluator's time enough to be clear, concise, and compelling. The road ahead. We are about to dismantle your current approach to job hunting. It might be uncomfortable to realize how many opportunities you have burned simply because you didn't understand the rules of the game. That is okay. The past is data. The future is strategy. You now have the map. You understand the stakes. You see the 7 steps laid out before you. But understanding the map is different from walking the path. The first step is the most critical because it happens the fastest. It is the moment where you win or lose the war before a single battle is fought. Most people think the interview starts when the first question is asked. They are wrong. By the time the first question is asked, the decision has often already been made. In the next chapter, we will uncover exactly what happens in those first few terrifying seconds and how you can script them to make yourself invincible. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Primacy. You walk into a room, or perhaps you log into a Zoom call. The camera flickers on. Before you have cleared your throat, before you have adjusted your tie or checked your background blur, a decision has already been made. It happens in the blink of an eye, faster than conscious thought. The person on the other side of the screen has looked at you, glanced at your headline, heard your first 3 words, and their brain has locked on to a judgment. This sounds unfair. We want to believe that we are evaluated on the sum total of our decade of experience, not the first 30 seconds of a meeting. We want to believe that the hiring manager will carefully read every line of the resume we spent weeks perfecting. But the human brain is an efficiency machine, not a fairness engine. It craves patterns, and it craves them immediately. This phenomenon is the invisible gravity weighing down your job search. It is the reason highly qualified candidates get rejected, and why sometimes less experienced candidates who know how to package themselves sail through to the final round. It is called the primacy effect, and it dictates that the first information we receive about a person holds more weight than everything that follows. If you ignore this, you are gambling with your career. You are hoping the evaluator has the patience to dig past a clumsy introduction to find the gold buried underneath. But if you master this, you stop gambling and start engineering the outcome. You take control of the lens through which you are viewed. The lens that colors everything. The moment an evaluator encounters you, their brain is desperate to categorize you. Are you a risk or an asset? Are you a leader or a follower? Are you high energy or low effort? Under the pressure of time and the fatigue of back-to-back calls, they cannot hold space for nuance. They need a label. Once that label is applied in the first minute, a psychological filter snaps into place. This is the anchor. If you start strong, crisp, and relevant, the anchor is competent. From that moment on, the evaluator is subconsciously looking for evidence to confirm that you are competent. If you stumble later, they will likely forgive it as a minor blip. They are on your side. However, if you start with a ramble, a vague introduction, or a resume that looks like a wall of gray text, the anchor becomes confused or risky. Now, you are fighting an uphill battle. Even your best answers later in the interview will be viewed with skepticism. They will wonder if your success was luck. They will scrutinize your claims. You are no longer playing to win. You are playing not to lose. This is why the slow warm-up is a career killer. Many candidates believe they can ease into an interview, that they can start with small talk about the weather and gradually build up to their value. They think that detail proves depth, so they pack their opening answers with context, history, and caveats. But detail without a frame is just noise. To a busy brain, noise is painful. You do not have the luxury of a warm-up. You have to win the interaction before the second hand on the clock hits the 90-second mark. You need to preload the frame so that every piece of evidence you provide later falls into a bucket labeled, "Hire this person." Scripting your opening scene. The most critical asset you will build to harness this power is your value narrative. This is not an elevator pitch. Elevator pitches are often generic summaries of who you are. A value narrative is a strategic weapon designed to solve the evaluator's problem. Most people answer the "tell me about yourself" question chronologically. They start with where they went to college, then walk through every job they have ever had, ending with why they are here today. This is boring, and it forces the interviewer to do the heavy lifting of figuring out why any of it matters. Instead, you're going to structure your opening around a specific framework: problem, action, result, transfer. You start with the problem. This isn't about you, it is about the landscape you navigate. You identify the specific pain point that teams in your industry face. It might be churn in a SaaS company, technical debt in engineering, or noise in marketing data. By naming the problem immediately, you signal that you understand the stakes. Then you move to the action. This is where you briefly describe your methodology. You don't list tasks, you describe your approach. You pivoted the strategy. You re-architected the system. You streamlined the workflow. Next comes the result. This must be concrete. It is the payoff. You didn't just improve sales, You drove a 20% increase in qualified leads in 1 quarter. You didn't just manage a team, you retained 100% of top performers during a merger. Finally, and most importantly, you hit the transfer. You explicitly state how you will bring that same problem-solving capability to this specific role. You bridge the gap between your past and their future. When you script this, it should take no more than 90 seconds to say aloud. It needs to be rehearsed until it sounds natural, not memorized. When you open an interview this way, you are not just answering a question. You are handing the interviewer a pair of glasses and saying, "View everything I say for the next hour through this lens of success." Winning the skim. Primacy doesn't just happen in the interview room. It happens the moment your resume is opened or your email lands in an inbox. In the digital realm, you have even less time. You don't have 90 seconds. You have roughly 6. The top third of your resume is prime real estate. It is the billboard on the side of the highway. If the billboard is cluttered or confusing, the driver keeps driving. If it is clear and bold, they take the exit. Many candidates waste this space with a generic objective statement or a list of soft skills like hardworking team player. This is a waste of pixels. To win the skim, you must engineer visual primacy. Your role title at the top should match the job you are applying for, or at least bridge the gap clearly. If they are hiring a senior product manager and your last title was product lead, make sure the connection is instant. Below that, you need a summary that utilizes the same logic as your value narrative. 3 lines, 3 bullets, 3 numbers. It needs to be punchy. It needs to use the keywords from the job description, not to trick an algorithm, but to signal to the human reader that you speak their language. The same logic applies to your email. The subject line is your first impression. A subject line that says application for job is a wasted opportunity. A subject line that says senior marketer, scaled ad spend 2x in 6 months is a hook. It utilizes the primacy effect before the email is even opened. It sets the anchor that you are a producer of results, not just a requester of employment. The body of your email should follow the same rule of brevity. You are not writing a cover letter. You are writing a teaser trailer. 1 sentence to establish relevance, 3 sentences to prove value, and 1 sentence to ask for the meeting. This respect for brevity signals competence. It tells the reader that you know their time is valuable, which is a trait of a high performer. Seizing the conductor's baton. Once you have secured the interview and you are face-to-face or screen-to-screen, there is one final maneuver that cements your status as the alpha in the room. It is a move that 99% of candidates are too afraid to make, but it is the hallmark of a winner. You must lead with an agenda. Usually, an interview feels like an interrogation. The interviewer asks, you answer, and you hope you survive. This dynamic places you in a subservient position. It implies that you are there to be judged, but you are not just there to be judged. You are there to consult. You are a professional discussing a business arrangement. In the first minute, after the pleasantries, you can shift the entire dynamic by asking a simple question. May I propose a quick plan for our time today to make sure we cover what matters most to you? Most interviewers will be stunned and relieved. They are often just as unstructured as the candidates. By offering a plan, you reduce their cognitive load. You say, I'd love to briefly cover my background relevant to your current goals, dive into a few key wins that map to this role, and then leave plenty of time for your questions. Does that sound fair? This does 3 things instantly. First, it shows you are organized. Second, it shows you are goal-oriented. Third, and most crucially, it establishes you as a peer. You are not begging for a job, you are running a meeting. This is the ultimate primacy play. You have framed yourself as a leader before you have answered a single technical question. Now, when they ask you about your weaknesses or your past failures, they are asking a leader, not a subordinate. The interpretation of your answers shifts in your favor. When the anchor holds. When you execute this correctly, the shift in the room is palpable. You will see the interviewer's shoulders drop. They will stop taking frantic notes and start nodding. They will lean in. You will know it is working when they start repeating your words back to you. If you used a specific phrase in your value narrative about accelerating velocity, and 10 minutes later they ask, "So, regarding velocity, you have won." You have successfully planted the anchor. In the best-case scenarios, this clarity allows them to skip steps. A hiring manager might wave off a planned technical screening because they get it. They might fast-track you to the final round because the narrative is so clean that they don't need to dig for more data. You become the easy yes. However, there are pitfalls. The most common mistake is failing to read the room. If you launch into your scripted narrative without taking a breath, you risk sounding robotic. Primacy requires connection, not just transmission. You must pause, you must smile, you must let the anchor land. Another risk is the mismatch. If your narrative is built around growth, but the hiring manager is terrified of risk, your anchor might sink the ship. This is why the research phase is non-negotiable. You must know what keeps them up at night so you can anchor yourself as the solution to that specific nightmare. The one thing that matters. You have now engineered the first 90 seconds. You have a resume that hooks the eye, an email that demands to be opened, and an opening script that frames you as the obvious solution. You have seized control of the chaos and imposed a structure that favors you. But a strong start is only the beginning. You have grabbed their attention, but attention is fleeting. You have made a promise of competence, but now you have to deliver on it. The human brain is fickle. Even with a strong anchor, if you bombard the evaluator with too many different strengths, too many disparate stories, and too many conflicting skills, the image blurs. They might like you, but they won't remember you. To truly get chosen, you cannot just be good at everything. You need to be unforgettable for one thing. There is a specific psychological mechanism that allows a single, vivid attribute to outshine everything else, casting a glow over your entire profile. It is the reason why we assume a good-looking person is also smart, or why a company with one-hit product is assumed to be well-run. In the next chapter, we are going to identify your bright star. We are going to find the single signal that will make you not just a candidate, but a legend in the hiring committee's mind. Chapter 3, Halo. The human memory is a ruthless editor. It does not record your interview like a video camera, preserving every nuance, every skill listed, and every carefully phrased answer. Instead, it functions more like a caricature artist. It scans you rapidly, looking for one defining feature, a prominent nose, a sharp chin, a wild hairstyle, and then it exaggerates that feature until it becomes the entire representation of who you are. When a hiring committee meets to discuss you days after the interview, they will not recite your resume. They will not debate the finer points of your third bullet point on page 2. They will use a mental shortcut. They will say, "Oh, the guy who scaled that marketplace," or "the woman who fixed the compliance disaster," or, if you haven't done your job, "the one with the messy background." This reductionism feels insulting to our complexity as human beings, but it is the inevitable result of cognitive overload. Evaluators are drowning in data. To survive, their brains seek a single bright signal that can serve as a proxy for everything else. This is where most candidates fail. They try to be everything. They want to show they are strategic and tactical, creative and analytical, independent and collaborative. They spread their narrative peanut butter so thin that it loses all flavor. By trying to be well-rounded, they become smooth, offering the evaluator's memory nothing to grip onto. To get chosen, you must stop trying to be a sphere and start being a spear. You need a sharp point. You need one blindingly bright star in your orbit that outshines the rest. This is the psychological lever known as the halo effect, and it is the secret to making your competence contagious. The spillover of excellence. The halo effect is a cognitive bias where the perception of one positive trait influences the perception of other, unrelated traits. In social psychology, this is often illustrated with physical attractiveness. We subconsciously assume that good-looking people are also smarter, kinder, and more honest, despite having no evidence to support that connection. In the high-stakes world of hiring, the halo effect works differently, but just as powerfully. It operates on the currency of professional competence. If you can plant one undeniable, vivid, and high-value win in the evaluator's mind, their brain will do the rest of the work for you. If you prove you are world-class at Project A, the evaluator's brain will subconsciously assume you are also good at leadership, time management, communication, and conflict resolution. The glow from that one victory spills over and illuminates the dark corners of your profile where you might be average or unproven. This simplifies the mental math for the hiring manager. Instead of calculating a complex average of your 50 different skills, they latch onto your halo anchor, your flagship achievement, and generalize outward. You stop being a risky collection of attributes and start being the person who delivered X. This is why depth beats breadth every time. A candidate with 5 pretty good stories is forgettable. A candidate with 1 unbelievable story is a legend. Your goal in this chapter is to identify that story, polish it until it shines, and then ensure it echoes through every single interaction you have. Finding your North Star. You cannot manufacture a halo out of thin air, but you almost certainly have one buried in your history, hiding under humble language. Your task is to excavate it. A halo anchor must satisfy 3 criteria. First, it must be role-aligned. If you are applying for a strategic leadership role, your anchor cannot be a solitary coding bug you fixed, no matter how difficult it was. It must map to the primary anxiety of the hiring manager. If their fear is, "we can't ship fast enough," your anchor must be about velocity. Second, it must be quantified. "I improved sales" is not an anchor, it is a claim. "I added $2 million in pipeline in Q3" is an anchor. Numbers cut through the fog of subjective language. They are hard edges in a soft conversation. Third, and this is the step most people skip, it must be named. You need to treat your flagship project like a product you are launching. Vague descriptions fade, names stick. Instead of saying, "I once managed a difficult migration," you say, "I led the Sunset project where we retired legacy tech in 30 days. Giving your win a name makes it a noun. It becomes an object that can be passed around the hiring table. Once you have identified this anchor, your 4-week launch, your 0 downtime migration, your retention turnaround, you must commit to it. This feels scary. It feels like you are neglecting your other skills. You might worry that by focusing on this one thing, you look narrow. But focus does not signal narrowness, it signals mastery. When you claim to be an expert at everything, you are believed to be an expert at nothing. When you claim to be the master of one specific, high-value outcome, the halo effect grants you the benefit of the doubt on everything else. The echo chamber strategy. Identifying the anchor is only the first step. The strategy lies in how you deploy it. You must become the architect of an echo chamber. You want the evaluator to encounter this same story so many times from so many different angles that it becomes an objective fact in their reality. It starts with the primacy we discussed in the previous chapter. Your halo anchor should be teased in your headline and your opening 90-second narrative. I'm a product manager who specializes in turnarounds. Most recently, I led the Q4 recovery that saved our biggest account. But you don't stop there. As the interview progresses, you weave this thread through the fabric of the conversation. When they ask about your leadership style, you don't give a textbook definition. You say, "I believe in servant leadership." For example, during the Q4 recovery, I noticed the team was burning out, so I... When they ask about conflict resolution, you bridge back to the anchor. Conflict is natural. During that same Q4 recovery, we had a disagreement between engineering and sales, and I resolved it by... Do you see what is happening? You are not telling 5 different stories that dilute your brand. You are telling one massive story from 5 different angles. You are reinforcing the halo. You are teaching them exactly what you want to be remembered for. This repetition breeds recall. By the end of the hour, they may not remember your college GPA or your third-to-last job title, but they will absolutely remember the Q4 recovery. And because that victory was significant, They will assume you possess all the other traits required to pull it off. Priming the witnesses. The most advanced application of the halo effect happens when you are not even in the room. You can engineer the echo to come from other people's mouths. When you reach the reference stage, or even if you just have a mutual connection, putting in a good word, do not leave their testimony to chance. Most candidates tell their references, they might call you, just say nice things. This results in vague, generic praise like, he's a great guy, very hard worker. That is nice, but it is not sticky. Instead, you prime your witnesses. You tell your reference, I've been talking to them a lot about the Q4 recovery project we worked on. It would be huge if you could mention your perspective on that. Now, imagine the hiring manager's experience. They heard about this project in your headline. You told them the story in the interview. And now, a third party is spontaneously bringing up the exact same win. This triangulation creates a massive psychological weight. It moves your claim from marketing to truth. The halo becomes blindingly bright. The evaluator feels a sense of coherence. Everything aligns. The risk of hiring you plummets because the narrative is consistent, verified, and vivid. The fine line between confidence and arrogance. There is a trap here, and it is a dangerous one. In your effort to shine a spotlight on your halo anchor, you can accidentally blind the interviewer with your ego. If you frame the story as, I did this, I saved them, I am the hero, you trigger a different psychological mechanism, reactance. The interviewer will instinctively want to knock you down a peg. They will start looking for flaws just to prove you aren't that great. To make the halo stick, you must share the light. The most effective way to brag is to brag about the process and the team, with you as the catalyst. When you tell the story of your anchor, focus on the struggle. Talk about the trade-offs. The Q4 recovery was brutal. We had to cut features we loved. The team worked incredibly hard. My role was just keeping the rails aligned so their work didn't go to waste. This humility makes the halo brighter. It shows that you are not just a high performer, but a self-aware one. It allows the interviewer to admire your achievement without feeling threatened by your arrogance. You become the protagonist they want to root for, not the antagonist they want to defeat. When the halo fails. Even with a perfect anchor, things can go wrong if you misread the room. The most common failure mode is anchoring on a metric that the company doesn't care about. If you spend the entire interview polishing your halo regarding a cost-cutting initiative, but the company is in hyper-growth mode and doesn't care about efficiency yet, your halo is shining the wrong color. You are proving you are great at something they don't value. This is why the research phase is not optional. You must know their North Star so you can align yours with it. Another failure is letting the anchor get buried. If you save your best story for the end of the interview, you have wasted the halo effect. The bias works by coloring subsequent judgments. If you reveal your greatness in the last 5 minutes, it's too late for it to spill over onto the rest of the conversation. You must deploy the anchor early. You must turn the light on immediately so the rest of the room is visible. The nagging doubt. You have now mastered the art of the start. You have engineered a powerful first impression with primacy, and you have illuminated your competence with a blindingly bright halo anchor. The evaluator likes you, they remember you, they think you are competent. But they are not ready to hire you yet. Deep down, the evaluator is still a creature of fear. Hiring is risky. If they hire you and you fail, it looks bad on them. So, even as they admire your halo, a small voice in the back of their head is whispering, "Is this too good to be true? What are we missing? Where is the catch?" They are starting to look for cracks in the armor. They are about to start testing you. If you leave this process up to them, they might poke a hole in the wrong place. They might ask a random question that trips you up. You cannot stop them from looking for evidence. But what if you could control where they look? What if you could hand them the magnifying glass and point it exactly where you want them to see? In the next chapter, we are going to stop playing defense against their doubts and start playing offense with their beliefs. We are going to take the wheel of their investigation. Chapter 4. Confirmation. The moment you walk out of an interview thinking you nailed it is often the moment you actually lost it. You replay the conversation in your head. You remember the smiles, the nodding heads, the pleasant small talk about the weekend. You think to yourself that they liked you. You assume that because the vibe was good, the offer is coming. But then, days pass, the silence stretches. Finally, you get the generic email stating that while they enjoyed meeting you, they have decided to move forward with another candidate who was a closer match. You are left wondering what happened. You had a great connection. You had the skills. What went wrong? What went wrong is that you mistook a pleasant conversation for a successful evaluation. You assumed that because you weren't messing up, you were winning. But in the high-stakes game of selection, the absence of mistakes is not the same as the presence of proof. While you were enjoying the rapport, the interviewer's brain was quietly, subconsciously hunting for evidence to justify the decision it wanted to make. You fell victim to the passive trap. You let them lead the investigation. You let them poke around in the dark corners of your experience, hoping they would find the right things. But they didn't. They found gaps. They found doubts. And because you didn't guide them, those doubts filled the silence. This chapter is about taking the flashlight out of their hands. It is about understanding that once you have established a strong first impression and highlighted your standout strength, your job shifts entirely. You are no longer there to answer questions. You are there to engineer the evidence that confirms their gut feeling. The invisible courtroom. To understand how to win this phase, you have to understand what is happening inside the evaluator's mind. It is not a classroom where they are grading you. It is a courtroom where they are building a case. Thanks to the primacy and halo effects we discussed in the previous chapters, the evaluator likely has a hunch about you within the first few minutes. Let's say you started strong. Their hunch is, this person is a high performer. Now the psychological phenomenon known as confirmation bias kicks in. This is the tendency for human beings to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms their pre-existing beliefs. If they think you are good, they are subconsciously looking for reasons to say yes. They want you to be the one. Hiring is exhausting, and finding a great candidate means they can stop searching. They are rooting for you, but they cannot hire you on a hunch alone. They need defensible proof. They need to be able to go back to their boss or their team and say, we are hiring this person because of X, Y, and Z. If you sit back and passively answer questions, you are forcing them to do the hard work of digging for that proof. And if they dig and hit a rock, a vague answer, a missing skill, a period of unemployment, their bias might flip. They might start looking for reasons to say no just to be safe. Your role in this chapter is to become the guide of your own evaluation. You must predict the evidence they need and hand it to them on a silver platter before they even ask for it. You are going to steer the evidence hunt so that you are the fit becomes the easiest belief for them to verify. Mapping the minefield. Before you ever step into the room or log on to the call, you need to build what I call a confirmation map. This is a strategic exercise where you step out of your own shoes and into the paranoid mind of the hiring manager. Every role has specific risks associated with it. If you are a junior candidate, the risk is that you will need too much hand-holding. If you are pivoting from a different industry, the risk is that you won't understand the cultural nuance. If you are overqualified, the risk is that you will get bored and leave. You need to list these fears. Be brutal with yourself. What are the 3 biggest reasons they might hesitate to hire you? Once you have identified these mines, you don't just hope they don't step on them. You build a bridge over them. For every likely concern, you prepare a specific piece of evidence, an artifact, a story, or a reference that neutralizes the fear. If you know they are worried about your technical depth because you come from a non-traditional background, you don't wait for them to grill you on syntax. You prepare a mini work sample, perhaps a code snippet or a teardown of a technical problem that you can offer proactively. You map the concern to the proof. This changes the dynamic of the interview. You are no longer dodging bullets, you are disarming them. When you sense they are probing a weak spot, you don't get defensive. You pivot to your pre-baked evidence. You say, I know that my background is different from the typical candidate, which is why I put together this one-page analysis of how I'd approach your current challenge. You have just turned a liability into a demonstration of initiative. You have confirmed their hope that you are capable, despite their fear that you are not. The architecture of a perfect answer. Steering the evidence hunt isn't just about physical artifacts. It is about how you structure your spoken words. Most candidates ramble. They get asked a question, and they start talking in circles, hoping that if they say enough words, one of them will be the right answer. Rambling is fatal to confirmation. It forces the interviewer to sift through a haystack to find the needle. Often, they just stop listening. To guide the evidence hunt, you need to speak in a structure that is impossible to misunderstand. We use a framework called SARL, Situation, Action, Result, Lesson. You start with the situation. Set the scene in 1 or 2 sentences. What was the context? What was at stake? Then, move immediately to the action. This is the most important part. What did you specifically do? Not what the team did, but what you did. Use active verbs. You diagnosed, you built, you led, you negotiated. Next is the result. As we discussed with the halo effect, this needs to be concrete. What changed because of your action? Did revenue go up? Did time to ship go down? Finally, and this is the twist that seals the deal, you end with the lesson. You tell them what you learned from that experience that makes you better today. This shows self-reflection and growth. But here is the trick that turns a monologue into a dialogue. You must cap your answer at 2 minutes. Then you stop and ask a checking question. You say, that was a high-level overview. Would you like me to dig deeper into the technical execution or focus more on the stakeholder management? This is a power move. It hands the control back to them, but on your terms. It forces them to tell you exactly what kind of evidence they are looking for next. Instead of guessing what they want to hear, you are asking them to choose the menu. You are co-leading the agenda. Bringing a weapon to a knife fight. Words are powerful, but seeing is believing. In a process dominated by talk, the candidate who brings visual proof is the candidate who gets remembered. Most people think portfolios are only for designers. This is a lie. Every role produces output, and every output can be visualized. If you are a salesperson, your artifact is a redacted brag sheet of your best quarter. If you are a project manager, it is a screenshot of a complex timeline you managed. If you are a strategist, it is a one-page memo outlining a market opportunity. We call this the mini work sample. It is not a massive project that takes you weeks to build. It is a small, focused demonstration of competence that you can show during the conversation. Imagine the interviewer asks, how would you handle a drop in retention? Candidate A says, well, I would look at the data, talk to customers, and then come up with a plan. That is a fine answer. It is correct, but it is forgettable. Candidate B says, I actually thought you might ask that, given the current market. I sketched out a quick decision tree on how I usually diagnose retention issues. Can I share my screen for 30 seconds to show you? Candidate B just won. They didn't just tell the interviewer they could do the job, they did the job in the interview. They provided undeniable physical confirmation of their competence. They made the belief this person is an expert the only logical conclusion. You should carry a digital or physical folder of these artifacts. You might not use them all, but having them ready gives you a quiet confidence that permeates the room. You are not hoping to be good enough. You are ready to prove it. Stealing their thunder. There is a counterintuitive strategy in confirmation that involves bringing up the negatives yourself. In psychology, this is known as inoculation. Just as a vaccine introduces a small amount of a virus to build immunity, you can introduce a small amount of doubt to build trust. If you know there is an obvious gap in your profile, perhaps you have never used their specific software stack, do not wait for them to discover it and use it against you. If they find it, it looks like a secret you were trying to hide. If you bring it up, it looks like a problem you have already solved. You might say, I know you use Tool X here, and my background is primarily in Tool Y. I spent this weekend going through the documentation for Tool X, and I realized the workflows are 90% identical. I'm confident I can bridge that gap in the first week. By naming the objection, you take the power out of it. You show that you are self-aware and proactive. You are confirming that you are honest and realistic, which are traits highly deeper valued than knowing a specific piece of software that can be learned in a day. The validation plan. As the interview winds down, most candidates revert to passivity. They ask, what are the next steps? And then they wait. To truly steer the evidence hunt, you should propose the next step. You want to close with what we call a validation plan. If you sense they are still on the fence about a specific skill, offer a way to prove it. You can say, I get the sense that writing quality is a huge part of this role. I'd be happy to take a pass at rewriting one of your public help articles tonight to show you my style. Would that be helpful? This is risky, yes. They might say no, but more often than not, they will be impressed by the offer. Even if they don't take you up on it, the fact that you offered confirms your confidence. You are signaling that you have nothing to hide and everything to give. You are making it easy for them to verify you. You are removing the friction from their decision-making process. You are telling them, I will do the work to prove I belong here, so you don't have to guess. The hidden barrier. By now, you have built a powerful engine. You have a strong opening that hooks them, primacy. You have a standout story that defines you, halo. And you have a strategy to feed them the evidence they need to justify hiring you, confirmation. You are doing everything right. You are providing the data. You are showing the proof. But there is one final, silent killer that can derail even the most qualified candidate. It isn't about what you are saying. It is about how they are receiving it. You can have the best evidence in the world, but if that evidence is hard to read, hard to understand, or exhausting to process, the human brain will reject it. We naturally distrust things that are difficult to decode. We conflate hard to read with not true. You might be sending the right signals, but if there is too much static on the line, the message won't get through. In the next chapter, we are going to look at the invisible design of your communication. We are going to learn why simple is not just a stylistic choice. It is a survival strategy. We will discover how to make your application feel not just impressive, but effortless. Chapter 5, Clarity. There is a specific sound that destroys careers. It is not a shout, a slam, or a buzzer. It is a sigh. It is the heavy, exhausted exhale of a hiring manager at 7:30 p.m., staring at a PDF that looks like a wall of gray bricks. They are tired. Their eyes are straining. They are looking for a reason to say yes, but you have given them a headache. They scan the first paragraph, get lost in a labyrinth of buzzwords and run-on sentences, and then they close the tab. You were qualified. You had the skills. You might have even been the best person for the job, but you were too hard to process. We often assume that if we are smart, our work should look complex. We think that big words signal high intelligence and that dense paragraphs prove we have a lot to say. We treat our resumes and emails like academic dissertations, believing that thorough is a synonym for good. This is a fatal error. In the economy of attention, friction is the enemy. The psychological principle at play here is called processing fluency. It is the measure of how easy it is for a human brain to take in and understand information. The science is ruthless. When information is hard to process, low fluency, we subconsciously perceive it as less true, less accurate, and riskier. When information is easy to process, high fluency, we perceive it as familiar, safe, and competent. If your application requires a decoder ring to understand, you are signaling risk. If your value proposition hits the brain like a clean, cold glass of water, you are signaling safety. In this chapter, we are going to strip away the noise. We are going to make every touch point, your resume, your LinkedIn, your emails, absurdly easy to process. We're going to make choosing you feel like the smartest, easiest decision they have made all day. The hidden tax on intelligence. Every time you ask someone to read a sentence, you are taxing their cognitive load. Working memory is a finite resource, like a battery. When a hiring manager opens your profile, they have a tiny sliver of battery life left for you. If you force them to spend that energy figuring out what your job title actually means, or hunting for your graduation date, or parsing a sentence like spearheaded cross-functional synergistic paradigm shifts, you are draining the battery before they even get to your achievements. Confusion kills momentum. When the brain encounters resistance, it stalls. It creates a feeling of unease. In a hiring context, that unease translates to, "I'm not sure about this person." It is not a logical deduction. It is a visceral reaction to cognitive strain. Conversely, clarity signals respect. When you present information in a way that respects the reader's time and energy, you are demonstrating empathy. You are showing that you understand the environment they operate in. You are proving that you can synthesize complexity into simplicity, which is one of the highest value skills in the modern workplace. You want your materials to be so clear that they get forwarded without explanation. You want a manager to be able to send your email to a VP with a note that just says, "Read this." If the VP has to ask, "What am I looking at?" you have failed. The architecture of the skim. The first step to mastering clarity is accepting a harsh truth. Nobody is reading your resume. They are skimming it. Eye tracking studies show that recruiters spend about 6 to 7 seconds on an initial scan. They follow an F-shaped pattern, scanning the top, glancing down the left side, and maybe catching a bolded word in the middle. If you design for a reader who is sitting in an armchair with a cup of tea, you are designing for a ghost. You must design for a scanner who is late for a meeting. This means visual hierarchy is not fluff, it is logic made visible. You need to top-load value. The most important information must be at the top of the page, at the top of the section, and at the start of the bullet point. Do not bury the lead. If you saved the company $1 million, that fact should not be at the end of a 3-line sentence. It should be the first thing the eye hits. You must also embrace white space. White space is not empty space. It is active space. It guides the eye. It gives the brain a moment to breathe. A resume packed margin to margin with text looks like a chore. A resume with generous margins and clear spacing looks like an invitation. The 3-3-3 protocol. To operationalize this, we are going to apply a strict constraint to your resume. Constraints breed creativity, but more importantly, they breed clarity. We call it the 3-3-3 rule. First, limit yourself to 3 lines of description per role. This is your high-level context, what the company does, and what your mandate was. If you can't explain your job in 3 lines, you don't understand your job well enough yet. Second, use a maximum of 3 bullet points per role. This is where people panic. They say, "But I did 10 things." Yes, you did, but 7 of them were average. Only 3 of them were halo-level wins. When you list 10 bullets, the 3 great ones get lost in the 7 average ones. By cutting the noise, you amplify the signal. Third, ensure every bullet has a number. Quantified outcomes are easier to process than qualitative claims. Improved efficiency is vague and requires interpretation. Reduced processing time by 20% is a concrete object the brain can grasp instantly. Finally, add 3 keywords to the top left of each role entry. These should be the core skills used in that job, e.g., Python, strategic planning, user research. This allows the scanner to glance down the left margin and instantly categorize your capability stack without reading a single sentence. Writing for the lizard brain. Once the visual structure is fixed, we have to look at the words themselves. Most professional writing is weak because it is passive. It hides the actor. It uses nouns where verbs should be. You need to write sentences that land hard. This means using an outcome-first structure. Instead of writing, Responsible for managing a team of sales representatives to drive revenue growth, you flip it. Generated $5 million in new revenue by leading a team of 10 sales representatives. See the difference? The first sentence forces you to wait until the end to find out why it matters. The second sentence hits you with the value immediately. You must also run a fluency pass on every asset you own. This is a ruthless editing session where your goal is to cut 30% of the words without losing any meaning. Look for zombie nouns, verbs that have been turned into boring nouns. Change led the implementation of to implemented. Change conducted an analysis of to analyzed. Change provided assistance to assisted. Replace weak adjectives with numbers. Significant growth means nothing. 105% growth means everything. Fast-paced environment is a cliché. Ship 12 features in 4 weeks is a fact. And please, for the love of your career, stop using jargon salad. Words like synergy, paradigm, holistic, and ideation are cognitive speed bumps. They force the reader to pause and translate. Use plain English. We worked together is better than we leveraged cross-functional synergies. The 131 email. Your resume gets you the interview, but your emails keep the process alive. Most candidates write emails that are too long, too apologetic, and too vague. They bury the ask in the final paragraph. We are going to replace those rambling messages with the 131 framework. This structure is designed to be read on a mobile phone while walking between meetings. The first section is one line. This is the why. It states the purpose of the email immediately. I'm writing to follow up on our interview last Tuesday regarding the product manager role. The middle section is 3 lines. This is the what. It provides the context, the value, or the evidence. I've been thinking about your challenge with user retention. I attached a brief teardown of the onboarding flow with 2 suggestions that might help. I also linked my portfolio below. The final section is 1 line. This is the ask. It is a clear call to action. Are you free for 10 minutes this Thursday at 2 p.m. to discuss next steps? 1 sentence, 3 sentences, 1 sentence. This structure is visually pleasing. It looks short. It feels respectful. It tells the recipient exactly what to do. When a busy executive opens a 131 email, they feel a wave of gratitude. You have made it easy for them to reply. The clickable proof bar. In the digital age, your claims should be verifiable with a single click. Yet many candidates make it incredibly hard to see their work. They say, portfolio available upon request, or link to a password-protected site where the login is buried in a separate document. You are going to build a clickable proof bar. This belongs in your email signature at the top of your resume and in your LinkedIn featured section. It is a simple row of links, but the magic is in the labeling. Do not label a link My Website or Project 1. Label it with the outcome. Case study, 28% churn cut. Code sample, React Native app. Talk, the future of AI. These titles act as headlines. Even if the person never clicks the link, they have read the headline. They have absorbed the win. And if they do click, ensure the link goes directly to the asset. No login screens. No click here to download. Direct access. We are reducing the friction between their curiosity and your competence. If they have a fleeting impulse to check your work, we want to capture that impulse instantly. If they have to struggle to find the file, the impulse dies, and with it, your opportunity. The fear of simplicity. There is a nagging voice in your head right now. It is saying, but if I simplify everything, won't I look shallow? Won't I look like I haven't done enough? This is the fear that drives the wall of text. It is the insecurity that complexity equals worth. But you must reframe this. Complexity is not a sign of depth, it is a sign of disorder. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. When you present a clean, sparse, high-impact profile, you are not hiding your lack of experience. You are highlighting your ability to prioritize. You are saying, I know what matters, and I am confident enough to leave out what doesn't. If you are truly worried about depth, use deep dive links. In your digital profile, you can have a clean summary and then a link that says, read the full technical breakdown. This gives you the best of both worlds, fluency for the scanner and depth for the reader who wants to go down the rabbit hole. The sound of silence. When you execute this chapter correctly, the result is silence. Not the silence of ghosting, but the silence of friction disappearing. You will notice that your interviews start differently. The interviewer won't spend the first 10 minutes frowning at your paper, trying to figure out who you are. They will look up, smile, and say, "I looked at your profile, and it's very impressive. I want to ask you about that 28% churn cut." You will see your emails getting replies in minutes, not days. You will find that rounds get skipped because the hiring manager just gets it. You have removed the cognitive tax. You have made yourself the path of least resistance. You have used the psychology of processing fluency to make your competence feel obvious and safe. But there is a danger in perfection. A candidate who is perfectly clear, perfectly structured, and perfectly efficient can sometimes come across as robotic, cold, a machine made of bullet points. We hire people we understand, yes, but more importantly, we hire people we like. We hire people who feel human. If you are all signal and no soul, you might win the logic war, but lose the emotional one. You have built a beautiful, clear, high-performance engine. Now we need to start the heart. In the next chapter, we are going to learn how to inject humanity into this machine without losing the clarity you just worked so hard to build. We are going to talk about the one thing that precedes competence in the human mind and why getting it wrong makes everything else irrelevant. Chapter 6, Warmth First. There is a candidate who exists in every hiring pipeline, a phantom that haunts recruiters and hiring managers alike. On paper, this person is a unicorn. Their resume is flawless, their skills are sharp, and their experience is exactly what the job description demanded. They answer every technical question correctly. They solve the case study with mathematical precision. They are, by every logical metric, the perfect hire. And yet, the moment they leave the room, the hiring manager turns to the team, sighs, and says, "I don't know, something felt off." The team nods. They can't quite articulate it. They use vague words like culture fit or energy, but the decision is unanimous. The unicorn gets a rejection email. Meanwhile, another candidate walks in. They have 70% of the skills. Their background is a bit messy. But 10 minutes into the interview, the hiring manager is leaning forward, smiling, and nodding. By the end of the hour, the team is brainstorming ways to close the gap in their skills because they are desperate to bring them on board. What just happened? Did logic fail? Did the hiring process break? No. The process worked exactly as human evolution designed it to work. The first candidate failed because they tried to win a competence game before they had won the trust game. They focused entirely on their ability and ignored their intent. They were cold, efficient, and impressive, and to a primal part of the human brain, that makes them a threat. The second candidate understood the most fundamental law of social psychology. Warmth precedes competence. The friend or foe calculation. To understand why the perfect candidate failed, we have to look at the order in which the human brain processes a new person. When you walk into an interview, the evaluator's brain does not immediately ask, "Is this person smart?" It asks a much older, more urgent question. Is this person a friend or a foe? This is the warmth competence model. Social psychologists have known for decades that we judge people on these two dimensions, but we do not judge them simultaneously. We judge warmth first. We need to know if a person has good intentions toward us, warmth, before we care if they have the ability to act on those intentions, competence. Think about it. A person who is highly competent but cold is dangerous. That is the archetype of the villain, the ruthless competitor who will stab you in the back to get ahead. A person who is warm but incompetent is annoying but safe. You might like them, but you won't hire them. The sweet spot, the golden quadrant, is high warmth and high competence. This is the ally. This is the person who has the skills to help you and the intent to use those skills for your benefit. If you skip the warmth step and go straight to showing off your skills, you are signaling power without connection. You are demonstrating that you are a sharp knife, but you haven't proven that you won't cut the person holding you. By leading with humanity, you lower the drawbridge. You signal safety. Once the evaluator feels safe, their brain switches gears from threat detection to value assessment. Only then can your competence truly land. The charisma myth. When I tell candidates they need to project warmth, they panic. They think I am telling them to be extroverted, funny, or charming. They imagine they have to walk in with a tight 5-minute stand-up routine or become best friends with the interviewer. This is a myth. In a professional context, warmth is not about being the life of the party. It is not about telling jokes, which is a high-risk strategy that often backfires. It is certainly not about being a pushover or a people-pleaser. In the context of getting chosen, warmth is simply the signal of low drama and high respect. It is the feeling that you are easy to work with. It is the projection of reliability, gratitude, and curiosity. It is the subtle assurance that if the server crashes at 3 a.m. or if the client screams at the team, you will be a calming presence, not an amplifier of chaos. You do not need to change your personality to project warmth. You just need to systematize a set of micro behaviors that signal respect. We are going to engineer nice so that it becomes a repeatable process, just like your technical skills. The warmth cue stack. To operationalize this, we use a sequence of small actions called the warmth cue stack. These are tiny signals that, when layered together, create an overwhelming impression of professional empathy. The first cue is respect for friction. This starts before you speak. It means joining the call 2 minutes early so you are there when they arrive. It means having your camera framed correctly and your audio crisp. When you fumble with your microphone for the first 5 minutes, you are not just having a technical glitch. You are signaling that you are high maintenance. You are forcing the interviewer to do the emotional labor of reassuring you. That is a withdrawal from the warmth bank. The second cue is the sweetest sound in any language, their name. Most candidates are so focused on their own pitch that they treat the interviewer like a prop. When you greet them, use their name. Hi, Sarah, thanks for making the time. It sounds simple, but it signals that you see them as a human, not just a gatekeeper. The third cue is the agenda ask we discussed in the primacy chapter. By asking, may I propose a quick plan, you are showing competence, yes, but you are also showing warmth because you are asking for consent. You are not bulldozing the room, you are collaborating. The final cue in the stack is gratitude without groveling. There is a difference between being thankful and being subservient. A weak candidate says, "Thank you so much for seeing me. I know you're busy. I'm so sorry to take your time." A winner says, "I've been looking forward to this conversation. I appreciate you carving out the hour." The former signals low status, the latter signals mutual respect. The loop that builds rapport. Once the interview begins, you need a mechanism to maintain that warmth while discussing hard business problems. The danger here is that as soon as you get a technical question, you drop the humanity and go into robot mode. To prevent this, we use the listen, label, lead loop. First, you listen. This means you do not interrupt. You do not think about your answer while they are talking. You listen fully to the question and the context behind it. Second, and this is the magic step, you label. Before you answer, you validate their perspective. You label the emotion or the constraint they just expressed. If they ask, how do you handle tight deadlines? Do not just jump into your time management strategy. Label the pain first. Say, it sounds like the team is under a lot of pressure to ship right now. See what happened there? You just validated their reality. You showed empathy. You signaled, I get it, I see the struggle. Third, you lead. Now that you have established connection, you pivot to the solution. In that kind of environment, I focus on this loop, listen, label, lead, turns an interrogation into a collaboration. It changes the dynamic from me versus you to us versus the problem. It makes the interviewer feel heard, and people love to hire people who make them feel heard. The advocate's email. The standard advice for post-interview follow-up is to send a thank you note. Most candidates send a generic email that says, "Thanks for the time. I learned a lot. Hope to hear from you." This is polite, but it's useless. It adds no value. It's a warmth signal, but a weak one. We are going to upgrade this to the advocate's email. The goal of this email is not just to say thanks, it is to make it easy for the person you just interviewed to sell you to their boss. Remember, after you leave, that interviewer has to go into a debrief meeting and argue for you. If you rely on their memory, you are gambling. Instead, you are going to write the script for them. The advocate's email has 3 parts. First, a genuine thank you that references a specific moment of connection. I really enjoyed our discussion about the migration challenges. Second, a summary of the value you discussed, formatted in bullets. Based on what you shared about the Q3 goals, here is how I think I can help immediately. 3. Third, and this is the warmth kicker, you include a low-friction offer of help. I found that article we discussed about system architecture linked here in case it's useful. You are signaling that you are already working for them. You are helpful, organized, and thoughtful. You are giving them a document they can forward to the hiring manager with a note that says, "Look at this. This is exactly what we need." The trap of people-pleasing. There is a dangerous precipice here. In your effort to be warm, you might slide into being a doormat. You might agree with everything they say. You might laugh too hard at their unfunny jokes. You might hesitate to push back on a bad idea. This is not warmth, this is weakness, and in a high-stakes role, weakness is fatal. True professional warmth requires boundaries. It is possible and necessary to disagree with an interviewer while remaining warm. The formula is simple: validate the intent, then challenge the content. I can see why you'd want to take that approach to minimize risk, warmth validation, but in my experience, that often leads to technical debt down the road. I usually prefer to competence boundary. This combination is magnetic. It shows that you respect them enough to tell them the truth, but you care enough to deliver it gently. It signals that you will be a partner, not a yes man. The energy mirror. One final nuance to mastering warmth is energy management. We often think we need to be high energy to be liked. But if you walk into a room with a quiet, introverted CTO and you are bouncing off the walls with enthusiasm, you are not creating warmth. You are creating dissonance. You are vibrating at a frequency that annoys them. Conversely, if you are interviewing with a high-octane sales VP and you are calm and contemplative, they will read you as low drive. You must use the energy mirror. In the first few minutes, gauge their pace. Do they talk fast or slow? Do they use casual language or formal diction? Do they lean in or sit back? You don't want to mimic them like a parrot. That's creepy. You want to calibrate your output to match their baseline. If they are calm, bring your energy down a notch. If they are excited, step yours up. This mirroring creates a subconscious feeling of sameness. We like people who are like us. It reduces the friction of communication and accelerates trust. The missing piece. By now, you have built a formidable application. You have clarity that respects their time. You have a narrative that hooks their attention. You have a halo that highlights your strength. And now, you have the warmth that makes them want to have you around. You are trusted, you are liked, you are understood. But there is still a gap. You are telling them you are good. You are telling them you have done these things. You are telling them you can solve their problems. Talk is cheap. In a market flooded with people who can talk the talk, the person who wins is the one who can prove it without saying a word. You need to stop claiming quality and start radiating it. You need to deploy markers that are impossible to fake, evidence that is so costly, so difficult to acquire, and so visible that it renders the interview questions almost irrelevant. In the next chapter, we are going to leave the realm of soft skills and enter the brutal, effective world of signaling theory. We are going to learn how to show, not tell. Chapter 7, Signals. In the animal kingdom, there is a peculiar paradox that biologists puzzled over for decades. It involves the peacock. The male peacock drags around a massive, iridescent tail that is heavy, cumbersome, and makes it difficult to fly. From a survival standpoint, it is a disaster. It makes the bird slow and easy for predators to catch. So why did evolution select for it? The answer lies in a concept called signaling theory. The tail is effective precisely because it is a burden. It is a costly signal. The peacock is effectively saying to potential mates, "I am so strong, so healthy, and so genetically superior that I can survive even with this massive handicap." A weak bird could not fake this tail. The energy cost would kill it. Therefore, the tail is an honest marker of quality. In the corporate world, we have a similar problem with a different name. It is the problem of cheap talk. Anyone can write hardworking on a resume. Anyone can say strategic thinker in an interview. Anyone can claim to be an expert in Python or project management. These words are cheap. They cost nothing to say, and because they cost nothing, bad candidates use them just as often as good candidates. This creates a market for lemons, where evaluators stop trusting words entirely because they cannot distinguish the truth from the noise. If you want to get chosen, you have to stop relying on cheap talk. You have to stop telling people you are good and start showing them the peacock's tail. You need to deploy markers that are so costly, so difficult to acquire, and so visible that they render the interview questions almost irrelevant. This chapter is about moving from claims to evidence. It is about signaling theory. The economics of credibility. When a hiring manager looks at your profile, they are making a risk assessment. They are looking for proxies, visible markers that stand in for invisible traits. They cannot see your work ethic, your intelligence, or your problem-solving ability directly. They can only see the signals you emit. Most candidates emit weak signals. They list job duties, they list soft skills. These are low-cost signals. A low performer can copy-paste the job description just as easily as a high performer. To separate yourself, you must emit high-cost signals. In economics, a signal is considered credible only if it is too expensive for a low-quality candidate to mimic. A shipped app in the App Store is a costly signal. It requires coding, design, and navigating the approval process. A low-effort candidate cannot fake that. A published article in a respected industry journal is a costly signal. A patent is a costly signal. A certification that requires a grueling exam, like a CPA or a CFA, is a costly signal. When you display these markers, you compress the decision time. The evaluator does not need to spend 20 minutes grilling you to see if you know your stuff. The signal has already done the heavy lifting. It has pre-sold you. It tells them, this person has already done the work. The quality is baked in. Climbing the ladder of proof. You might be thinking that you don't have a patent or a best-selling book, so this strategy is out of reach. This is false. Signals exist on a spectrum, and you can build what I call a signal ladder. You don't need to start at the top, you just need to start climbing. The bottom rung of the ladder consists of quick wins. These are artifacts you can create in a weekend, but still separate you from 90% of the competition. If you are a designer, this is a portfolio link that works instantly on mobile. If you are a developer, it is a clean public GitHub repository. If you are a marketer, it is a 2-page case study PDF that breaks down a campaign you ran. The middle rung is medium plays. These require more time and effort, which makes them stronger signals. This could be a guest article on a niche industry blog. It could be a workshop you delivered at a local meetup. It could be a pilot project you built that actually has users. These signals show that you are not just an employee, you are an active participant in your field. You have peer review. The top rung is heavy hitters. These are the signals that stop the scroll. A major product launch that made the news. A selective fellowship. A recognized award. These are the signals that act like a battering ram, knocking down doors that would otherwise be locked. Your goal is to have at least 2 or 3 signals on this ladder. You don't need a dozen. In fact, a dozen weak signals, like 20 easy LinkedIn Learning badges, actually dilute your value. They look like clutter. 2 or 3 strong, relevant signals pierce through the noise. turning invisible labor into visible gold. The biggest tragedy in the job market is the amount of high-quality work that remains invisible. You spend years solving complex problems, building intricate spreadsheets, and managing difficult stakeholders. But when you leave the company, all that work stays behind on a secure server. You walk out with nothing but your memories and a bullet point on a resume. To win with signals, you must adopt a new habit: convert work into artifacts. You need to sanitize and export your competence. Obviously, you cannot share proprietary data or trade secrets, but you can almost always share the structure of your success. If you built a complex financial model that saved the company money, you can build a sanitized version with dummy data and host it as a template. If you created a new onboarding process, you can write a playbook that outlines the philosophy and steps, stripping away the specific company names. We call this the teardown or the playbook. When you attach a link to your application that says, "Here is the exact playbook I used to reduce churn by 15%, you are no longer a candidate making a claim. You are a consultant offering value. You are giving them a sample of the product before they buy it. This is the ultimate risk reduction. Why would they hire the person who says they can do it when they can hire the person who just showed them how it's done? The art of placement. Creating the signal is only half the battle. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, it makes no sound. If you have a brilliant portfolio, but the link is buried at the bottom of your resume, it makes no impact. You must place your signals where the eye lands first. This goes back to the primacy effect. Your LinkedIn headline should not just be your job title. It should reference your strongest signal. Product manager shipped 3 top 10 apps. Sales lead, $10 closed annual recurring revenue. Your resume needs a key projects or selected work section right at the top under the summary. This section should have clickable links. In the digital age, a static PDF is a dead document. Your resume should be a portal. Your email signature is prime real estate that goes to waste. Instead of just your phone number, add one curated link. Check out my latest analysis on market trends here. Every email you send becomes a marketing impression. When you surface these signals early, you frame the entire conversation. The interviewer clicks the link before the call. They see the quality of your thinking. They see the polish of your presentation. By the time they say hello, they are already impressed. They are not asking, "Is this person good?" They are asking, "Can we afford this person?" The noise of irrelevance. There is a trap in signaling theory, and it is the trap of the mismatch. A signal is only valuable if the receiver cares about it. If you are applying for a role in a scrappy, fast-moving startup, and your primary signal is a certification in a heavy, bureaucratic project management methodology, you are sending a negative signal. You are proving you are an expert in something they hate. You are signaling slow. If you are applying for a technical leadership role, and your signals are all about your individual coding speed, you might be signaling micromanager rather than leader. You must align your signals with the specific anxieties of the role. If the role requires deep technical expertise, show the code. If the role requires executive presence, show the video of you speaking at a conference. If the role requires grit, show the side project you bootstrapped with zero budget. This requires you to be ruthless. You might be proud of a specific achievement, but if it doesn't help the evaluator solve their specific problem, it is noise. Cut it. Focus the beam. The ego paradox. Many people hesitate to deploy signals because they are afraid of bragging. They have been taught that humility is a virtue and that good work speaks for itself. But in a noisy market, silence is not humility, it is invisibility. You must reframe signaling. It is not about ego, it is about service. When you provide a clear, visible artifact of your work, you are serving the evaluator. You are making their job easier. You are removing the ambiguity that causes them stress. You are saying, "I respect your time enough to show you exactly what I can do, so you don't have to guess." Furthermore, the best signals are often collaborative. When you share a case study, you can highlight the team effort while showcasing your leadership. When you share a talk, you are sharing knowledge with the community. This is not "look at me," it is "look at what we built" or "look at what I learned." Framed this way, signaling becomes an act of generosity. You are contributing to the field, not just asking for a job. The pre-sold interview. When you execute this strategy correctly, the nature of your interviews changes fundamentally. Without signals, an interview is an interrogation. The evaluator is trying to find out if you are lying. They are probing for weaknesses. They are skeptical. With strong signals, the interview becomes a consultation. They have already seen the proof. They know you can do the work. Now, they want to know how you did it. They want to know your philosophy. They want to know if you can do it for them. You will find that the questions become higher level. Instead of, "Tell me about a time you managed a conflict," they ask, "In your case study, you mentioned pivoting the strategy in week 3. Walk me through that decision." You are discussing the work as a peer, not as a subordinate. You have pre-sold your competence. The signal has traveled faster than the speed of the interview process. The final layer of trust. We have now stacked the deck in your favor. We have engineered the first impression. We have highlighted a halo strength. We have guided the confirmation bias. We have simplified the message. We have established warmth. And we have deployed costly, hard-to-fake signals of quality. You are standing apart from the crowd. You look like the obvious choice. But there is one final hurdle. No matter how good your signals are, they are still coming from you. You are the one curating the portfolio. You are the one writing the case study. You are the one claiming the credit. In the back of the evaluator's mind, there is a tiny sliver of doubt. "Of course they look good," the voice says. "They are selling themselves." To dissolve this final residue of skepticism, we need to bring in a third voice. We need someone else to stand up and say, "Yes, everything they showed you is true. In fact, they are even better than they say." There is a psychological force that overrides almost everything else. It is the reason we choose a restaurant with a line out the door over an empty one. It is the reason we buy the product with 5 stars. In the next chapter, we are going to harness the power of the crowd. We are going to learn how to orchestrate the voices of others so that saying yes to you doesn't just feel smart, it feels like the only safe option. Chapter 8, Proof. There is a moment in every high-stakes decision where logic fails. Imagine you are standing on the edge of a cliff, strapped into a hang glider for the first time. The instructor has explained the aerodynamics. You have checked the equipment. You have watched the safety video. Logically, you know you should be fine, but your lizard brain is screaming at you to step back. You are paralyzed by the perceived risk of the unknown. Then you look to your left. You see someone else, someone who looks just like you, jump off the ledge, soar through the air, and land safely in the valley below. They are laughing. They are high-fiving the landing crew. Suddenly, the fear evaporates. You step forward and jump. What changed? The aerodynamics didn't change. The equipment didn't change. The only thing that changed was that you saw someone else take the bet and win. In the hiring process, the hiring manager is the person on the cliff. Hiring you is a risk. It is a leap into the unknown. They have seen your resume, primacy. They have heard your story, halo, and they have seen your work samples, signals. Logically, the case is closed. But emotionally, they are still standing on the edge. They are terrified of making a mistake, of hiring a false positive who drains the budget and ruins the team culture. This is where most candidates stop. They assume that because they made a logical case, the offer will follow. They wait by the phone, hoping the manager is brave enough to jump. Winners do not rely on the bravery of strangers. They provide a parachute. They deploy the final, most powerful psychological lever in the human arsenal, social proof. The safety switch in the brain. Social proof is the psychological phenomenon where people copy the actions of others in an attempt to undertake behavior in a given situation. It is why we choose the busy restaurant over the empty one. It is why we buy the product with 5,000 reviews instead of the one with 5. When we are unsure, we outsource our judgment to the crowd. In the context of your career, social proof is the voice of the crowd saying, "He is safe. She is the real deal. We bet on this person and we won." When you orchestrate this correctly, you dissolve the residual doubt that lingers after the interview. You replace the hiring manager's anxiety with the comforting feeling of consensus. If a respected peer, a former boss, or an industry expert vouches for you, hiring you stops being a risk and starts being the smart move. But here is the mistake most people make. They treat references as a compliance box to be checked at the very end of the process. They hand over 3 names and phone numbers and hope for the best. This is not strategy, this is negligence. To get chosen, you must build what I call a proof stack. You need to layer endorsements throughout the entire life cycle of the application, from the very first email to the final contract negotiation. The warm entry. The proof stack begins before you even speak to the company. It starts with how you enter the room. If you apply through a cold portal, you are an unverified stranger. You are a risk. If you are introduced by a current employee or a mutual connection, you borrow their credibility. The trust the company has in them is temporarily transferred to you. But securing a referral is not just about asking for a favor. It is about engineering the introduction so that it is frictionless for the connector and compelling for the receiver. Most people write to a connection and say, "Hey, can you refer me for this role?" This forces the connector to do the heavy lifting. They have to look up the role, figure out why you are a fit, and write an email. Most people are lazy, so they won't do it, or they will do a poor job. You must write the forwardable blurb. You send your contact a clean, 3-sentence paragraph that they can copy and paste. It should include the role link, your Halo anchor, the specific win we identified in Chapter 3, and a link to your signal, portfolio, or case study. It looks like this. I'm attaching Jane's resume for the senior PM role. She just led a retention project that cut churn by 15% at company, which sounds like exactly what your team is solving for right now. Her portfolio is linked here. When your contact sends this, they look smart for finding talent, and you arrive in the hiring manager's inbox not as a beggar, but as a vetted solution. You have used social proof to kick open the door. The inside man. Once you are in the interview process, you need to cultivate in-process advocacy. This is the most underutilized form of proof. Usually, you will interview with a panel. There is the hiring manager, but there are also peers, cross-functional partners, and maybe a skip-level executive. Most candidates treat these people as hurdles to jump over. You should treat them as potential witnesses for the defense. Your goal in every peer interview is to turn that person into a champion who will fight for you in the debrief room. The debrief is where the actual decision happens. The hiring manager will ask the room, "What did we think?" If you have 3 people saying, "She was fine," you lose. If you have one person saying, "We have to hire her because she solved the exact problem I'm struggling with," you win. To get that advocacy, you use the micro-solve. During the interview, identify a specific pain point that the peer is facing. Maybe the engineer is drowning in technical debt. Maybe the marketer is struggling with attribution. After the interview, send a follow-up note specifically to that person. Do not just say thank you. Provide a resource, a framework, or a quick idea that addresses their pain. I was thinking about what you said regarding the API latency. Here is a link to a library we used to solve that at my last gig. Now, you're not just a candidate, you are an ally. When the debrief happens, that engineer is not judging you. They are rooting for you because you have already provided value. Their endorsement in that private meeting is the highest form of social proof because it comes from inside the house. Architecting the closing argument. Finally, we arrive at the formal reference check. This is the moment where the deal is either sealed or lost. Most candidates choose references based on who likes them the most. They pick the manager who was their friend or the colleague they grabbed lunch with. This is a mistake. You do not need a character witness, you need an expert witness. You must select references who have high credibility and high relevance to the role you are seeking. If you are applying for a leadership role, a peer reference is weak. You need a former boss or a stakeholder who can speak to your executive presence. But selecting the right people is only step one. Step two is coaching them. You would never send a lawyer into a courtroom without briefing them on the case. Yet candidates send references into calls with recruiters having no idea what the new role is about. The recruiter asks, "How is their strategic thinking?" And the reference says, "Well, they were really organized." The mismatch creates doubt. You need to send your references a reference brief. This is a one-page cheat sheet. It includes 1. The exact title of the role you are up for. 2. The 3 main challenges the new company is facing. 3. The specific Halo anchor story you told the interviewers. 4. 3 bullet points of things you would love for them to highlight. You are not telling them to lie. You are aligning their memory with your narrative. You are saying, they are really worried about my ability to handle scale. Do you remember that project where we handled 10K concurrent users? It would be amazing if you could mention that. When the recruiter calls your reference and hears the exact same story you told in the interview, but from a third party, the confirmation bias locks in. The consistency is intoxicating. It feels like truth. The public ledger. In the digital age, social proof also exists in the public square. Evaluators will Google you. They will look at your LinkedIn. What they find there should confirm the narrative. This is where the wins thread comes into play. Instead of letting your recommendations get buried at the bottom of your profile, curate them. Take a screenshot of a Slack message where a boss praised your work, with names redacted if necessary. Take a snippet of a client email. Pin these to your featured section. When a hiring manager glances at your profile and sees a visual wall of praise, real, raw, unedited praise, it bypasses their skepticism. It is hard to fake a screenshot of a team celebrating a launch. It feels authentic. It signals that you are a person who generates victory for those around you. The trap of the vague. There is a danger in social proof, and it is the trap of the vague compliment. He's a great guy. She's a pleasure to work with. I'd hire him again. These sound nice, but they are calorieless. They are fluff. In a competitive market, fluff is interpreted as a lack of substance. If the best thing your reference can say is that you are nice, the hiring manager assumes you weren't effective. You must coach your advocates to speak in metrics and specific outcomes. Great guy is weak. He led the team that added $2 million in pipeline is strong. Pleasure to work with is weak. She was the only person I trusted to handle our biggest client is strong. Specific generalities repel. The timing of the ask. The final element of orchestration is timing. If you drop your references too early, you waste their ammunition before the hiring manager cares. If you drop them too late, the doubt might have already solidified. The perfect moment to deploy your heavy hitters is during the decision window. This is usually right after the final round of interviews when the team is debating. You can proactively say to the recruiter, "I know you're wrapping up discussions this week. I have a former VP of engineering who offered to hop on a quick call to chat about my work on distributed systems. Would that be helpful for the team?" By offering the reference proactively at the critical moment, you are handing them the tool they need to close the deal. You are showing confidence. You are saying, "I am not afraid of you digging deeper. In fact, I encourage it." The final lock. You have now built a complete system. You grab their attention in the first minute, primacy. You focused their memory on a standout strength, halo. You guided their investigation, confirmation. You made it easy for them to understand you, clarity. You made them like you, warmth. You showed them undeniable evidence of quality, signals. And finally, you surrounded them with a chorus of voices confirming that you are the right choice, proof. The hiring manager is no longer standing on the cliff. They are strapped in, the parachute is open, and they are gliding toward a signature on the offer letter. But getting the job is only the first iteration of this process. The principles you have learned in this book are not just for job hunting. They are the physics of professional reputation. They are the laws that govern how you get promoted, how you get raises, and how you build a career that gives you total freedom. Most people stop here. They get the job, and they turn the machine off. They go back to sleep. They let their signals decay and their proof go stale. But you're not going to do that. You are going to build something that runs on its own. You are going to build a flywheel that generates opportunity while you sleep. In the final chapter, we are going to take all 7 parts of this engine and assemble them into a set-and-forget operating system. We are going to ensure that you never have to look for a job again, because the jobs will start looking for you. Chapter 9, Always Chosen. There is a moment in mechanics when a flywheel, having been pushed and pushed with great effort, finally accumulates enough rotational energy that it begins to spin on its own. The heavy lifting is done. The momentum takes over. Most people treat their careers like a boulder. They have to push uphill every few years. They struggle, they sweat, they heave the rock to the top of the mountain, getting the job, and then they let go. They stop pushing. They let the rock roll back down to the bottom. 3 years later, when they want a promotion or a new role, they walk back down to the valley, stare at the boulder, and start the exhausting, painful push all over again. This is the amateur way. It is a life of friction, anxiety, and starting from zero. You are done with that life. Over the last 8 chapters, you have not just learned how to interview, you have learned how to build a flywheel. You have assembled a system of psychological levers that, when fired in sequence, create a momentum that makes you undeniable. The goal of this book was never just to get you a job. It was to change the way you exist in the professional marketplace. It was to move you from being a passive applicant who hopes to be noticed to an active architect who designs the decision for the evaluator. Now, we are going to look at how to keep this engine running forever. We are going to consolidate everything you have learned into a lifelong advantage so that the next time opportunity knocks, you won't have to scramble. In fact, if you do this right, you won't wait for the knock at all. You will be the one opening the door. The architecture of inevitability. Let's look at the machine you have built. It is not a collection of random tricks. It is a logical sequence that mirrors the way the human brain processes risk and value. It starts with the first minute. You learn that you cannot win the game in the middle if you lose it at the start. By mastering primacy, you stopped wandering into rooms and started setting the frame. You built a 90-second value narrative that anchors the evaluator's judgment before they have time to doubt you. You learned to lead with a simple agenda, proving you are a captain, not a passenger. Then, you simplified the picture. You realized that trying to be good at everything makes you memorable for nothing. You embraced the halo effect by picking one flagship win, your 4-week launch, or your retention turnaround, and making it echo until it became the lens through which all your other skills were viewed. You stopped playing defense. Instead of waiting for them to find your flaws, you used confirmation bias to steer the evidence hunt. You mapped their fears and handed them the artifacts that proved you were safe. You offered mini work samples that turned "I think I can" into "Look, I did it." You respected their exhaustion. You accepted that confusion is a career killer, and you committed to clarity. You stripped the jargon from your resume and the fluff from your emails. You adopted the 3-3-3 rule and the 1-3-1 email structure, making yourself the path of least resistance. You remembered that they are human. You prioritized warmth before competence. You systematized the micro-behaviors of respect, the early join, the name recall, the listen label lead loop, so that they didn't just admire your skills, they felt safe with your character. You stopped telling and started showing. You used signaling theory to replace cheap talk with costly markers. You built a signal ladder of public artifacts, case studies, and portfolios that pre-sold your quality before you even said hello. Finally, you brought backup. You orchestrated social proof so that you never walked into the decision room alone. You lined up the referral, the in-process advocate, and the closing reference to create a chorus of consensus. This is your operating system. It is a loop, and like any loop, the more you run it, the faster it goes. The shift from passenger to pilot. The immediate result of applying this system is that you get the job. But the deeper, more permanent result is a shift in your psychology. For years, you may have felt like a beggar in the labor market. You felt that the company held all the cards, and you were lucky to be invited to the table. This dynamic destroys your ability to negotiate. It makes you desperate, and desperation smells like risk. When you run this system, the power dynamic flips. You are no longer asking for a favor. You are offering a verified asset. You are controlling the frame. You are guiding the timeline. You are supplying the evidence. This allows you to negotiate from a position of extreme strength. When you have multiple companies responding to your signals, and when you have pre-sold your value through artifacts, the conversation shifts from how much will you cost us to how much value will you bring. You stop compromising on role scope and salary because you have options. You gain the ability to say no, and in any negotiation, the person who can walk away with a smile is the person who wins. The ripple effect on your life. The beauty of these principles is that they do not stop working when you sign the offer letter. The psychology of selection is the psychology of leadership. The warmth-first habits you built to win the interview are the same habits that make you a beloved manager. Leading with a clear agenda, listening before you lead, and labeling the needs of your team will make collaboration smoother and reduce friction in every meeting you run. The clarity you practiced on your resume will transform your internal communication. When you send a 131 email to your CEO, they will notice. When you present a project update with the visual hierarchy of a well-designed artifact, you will be perceived as executive material. Clarity spreads. When you model it, your team begins to communicate better, and your influence grows. The signals you built, the case studies, the public artifacts, become the foundation of your personal brand within the company. You become the person who ships. You become the person who documents success. This makes it incredibly easy for others to champion you for promotions because the evidence is already there, packaged and ready to share. The flywheel of reputation. Here is where the magic happens. If you continue to practice these steps, the effort required to get your next opportunity drops precipitously. In the beginning, you have to build the artifacts from scratch. You have to cold email for referrals. You have to script your narrative. It is work. But 3 years from now, if you have maintained this system, you will have a library of reusable assets. Your wins thread will be a mile long. Your portfolio will be stocked with heavy hitter signals. Your network will be primed with advocates who know exactly how to sell you because you taught them how. Reputation pre-sells you. Eventually, you reach a tipping point where you don't have to send the application. The signals you are emitting are so strong that the market comes to you. Recruiters don't just message you, they pitch you. Former colleagues introduce you to opportunities before they are posted. This is the state of being always chosen. It is the state where your name enters the room before you do. Igniting the engine. You have the map, you understand the mechanics, but a map is useless if you do not start the car. You might be tempted to close this book and say, "That was great, I'll use it next time I look for a job." Do not do that. If you wait until you are desperate, you have waited too long. The time to build the roof is when the sun is shining, not when the storm is overhead. You need to take action today to signal to your own brain that you are serious. First, draft your 90-second value narrative. Do it right now. Open a blank document. Write down the problem you solve, the action you take, the result you get, and the transfer to your next goal. Polish it until it is sharp. Paste it at the top of your resume. Paste it in your LinkedIn About section. Then, book 2 coffee chats this week just to test it out. See how it feels to say it aloud. Watch the other person's eyes light up when you frame yourself clearly. Second, build your proof bar. Find 2 artifacts of your work, a deck, a code sample, a write-up, and make them public. Put the links in your email signature. Do it today. Every email you send from this moment on should be a subtle advertisement of your competence. The final truth. I want to leave you with one final thought, a secret that high performers know but rarely say out loud. The hiring process is broken. It is noisy, biased, and chaotic. Most companies are terrible at it. They accidentally reject amazing people every single day because they are too overwhelmed to see the truth. By using this system, you are not manipulating them. You are saving them. You are acting as a beacon in the fog. You are doing the hard work of clarity so that they don't have to. You are organizing the chaos of your potential into a narrative they can understand. You are making it safe for them to make the right decision. You are not begging for a seat at the table. You are proving that the table is stronger with you sitting at it. The world is full of people who are waiting to be picked. They are standing in line, holding their ticket, hoping for a turn. You are no longer in that line. You have stepped out of the queue and walked through the side door. You have the assets, you have the psychology, you have the control. The job is not the prize. The salary is not the prize. The title is not the prize. You are the prize. Now go out there and let them win you.